We're going to go on Daf Bava Metzia Daf Samach Beis. We begin on the bottom line of Samach Aleph from a Beis, where the Gemara is in the middle of a conversation here regarding the halacha of our Mishnah. We opened up Perek Ezu Neshech in the prior Daf, and we spoke about Neshech and Tarbis, which are two terminologies used in the pasuk. It's Kasbach Leisin LeBeneshech Uvemarbis Leitit Nechlech. Now the Gemara ultimately said Neshech and Tarbis refers to the same thing, and when our Mishnah said Ezu Neshech Vezu Tarbis, was referring to actually Ribbis Deraisa, and Tarbis was referring to, as we'll explain in today's daf, Ribbis Derabanan. Now, the Gemara was making a few differences between what's called Ribbis Ketutza and Ribbis She'ena Ketutza. Ribbis Ketutza is the biblical violation of a set amount of ribbis. I'm lending you money, $100, you're going to give me back $150. That's Ribbis Ketutza. Then there's Ribbis She'ena Ketutza, what's called Avak Ribbis. And that the Gemara had a machlekes regarding Ribbis Ketutza, when one of the elements, do we say that when the person collected the Ribbis Ketutza, that the Dayanim forced the Malva, the lender, to give back that money, the interest, the forbidden interest? Is there a chiv to give it back or not? The Gemara continues to explain these two opinions regarding if there is a chiv to give it back or not. Shit goes back because of which in today's daf, throughout the entire world, and everyone should have a good night. So I'm discussing today's daf, like we're mentioning. Rabbi Lazar says Ribbis Ketutza is Yoitze B'Dayanan. The judges will take back the forbidden interest. Rabbi Yochanan says that Ribbis Ketutza is in Yoitze B'Dayanan. Obviously, they over Isser, but the judges do not collect that forbidden interest. And Avak Ribbis, everyone agrees, by the dust of Ribbis, meaning the rabbinic, is in Yoitze B'Dayanan. It's not collected with judges. Some of the other ideas in today's daf is the Gemara explains that when our Mishnah said Tarbis Ketzad, which again is the terminology of the pasuk, the Mishnah said Hamaber B'Peiris Ketzad. And what's the case of? Again, it's not the biblical Tarbis; it's just a terminology for the rabbinic case, which that's what we said is a unique case. And the Gemara is going to explain exactly what the case is. But the related idea is in Peiskin al Peiris Yotza Hashar. A person is not allowed to go ahead and set a certain price for the produce that he's going to give him throughout the year until the market value has gone out. Meaning we know what the market price is. What's the market price? Is like, okay, apples cost $30 a year. If in this season it's $30, then you could say, okay, I'm paying you $30 for this amount. And moreover, so even though the guy himself, the seller, doesn't have the item, but other people have it already, and therefore it's going to be permitted. Our Mishnah talks about a unique case of it's a compound, the balocha b'demehen ve'en leperis, which is that when ultimately this guy wants to get the item that he had prepaid for, the guy doesn't have the actual produce that he sold him, and he says, you know what? Okay, I'll give you something else. I'll give you the wine instead of the wheat. That's where our Mishnah's case is when it describes this ribbis derabanan of what we're calling tarbis ketzad. So we begin the current daf. On Daf Samach Aleph and Beis, the bottom line, as we mentioned, that these machlekes were going to ribbis Yoitze B'Dayanan. Is the Malva compelled by Bezin to return the interest that he collected? Rabbi Lazar says Ribbis Ketutza is Yoitze B'Dayanan. Yeah, interest stipulated at the time of the loan, which is Ribbis Deraisa, the Malva is compelled to return it. Avak Ribbis, interest not stipulated at the time of the loan, which we'll see later on in the Perek, is only Ribbis Midrabanan. The Malva is not compelled to return it. Rabbi disagrees, and he says, no, for the Ribbis Ketutza, Nami in the Yoitze B'Dayanan. Even in the case of Ribbis Deraisa, Rabbi Yochanan holds the Malva is not compelled to return it. Now the Gemara explains, he holds that yes, Ribbis Ketutza, a regular case of lending with interest, the judges will repossess it and take it away. What's the reason? Because the pasuk says, as you continue to have Samach Beis Amid Aleph, pasuk in Vayikra Chav Hey says in the beginning of the pasuk is talking about Ribbis. It's saying Al Tikach Me'ito, don't take from him ribbis. And then the pasuk says, and your brother should live with you. What is that saying? What does that have to do with ribbis? Ahaderle, give it back to him, as the Bach adds on the word, that he could live with you. That's the purpose of why it says that. So you see the halacha of giving back the ribbis. It says, Rabbi Yochanan, what does he do with v'chayechicha? Because he's not learning it to return, because he holds you don't have to return ribbis ketutza. So according to him, what does the pasuk teach? So this is actually a classic halacha. He needs it as learned in the following brisa. Two people are walking on the road, and they're in the desert or whatever, they're far out somewhere, and then one of them has in his hand a flask of water. If they're both going to drink from the flask because they're both parched, Mason, they're going to die from thirst because there's not enough water for the two of them. If one of them is going to only drink the water, he's going to get to the settlement, and then finally he'll get more water. What do you do in such a circumstance? Better let them both drink and die, and you don't have one of them see the death of his friend. You're going to drink the water and see the guy dying from thirst? No, let you both die. Drink until you can get there, until whatever you get to, and you'll both die. Until Rabbi Kiva came along and he taught, no, that your brother should live with you. What's with you? With you is you have to live first. Your life comes before the life of your friend, and therefore you take the water and you drink the water from the flask, you make it to town, and he won't make it. That's what, according to Rabbi Yechanan, is what imach is coming to teach. However, Meisvei, the Gemara asks on Rabbi Yechanan for the following brisa. The brisa says, "Haniach lehen avia moyishal ribis." If their father left over for them, father passed away, and he was a guy who would lend on interest. So, even though they know father left over a huge, massive fortune they made lending on interest, and they know that, they don't have to give it back, these yarshin. Now, the Bach adds on the words in Eis Beis, Inuhu de in chayav lahachzer. Which obviously seems like from the Divrei Maskal Rashi had this girsa, that the Yershin, the children, they don't have to give back the interest, which, as Rabbi explains in Agoz Labas and Baba Kamadav Kovid Beis and Aleph, where it says V'chai Achicha Imach, which teaches L'didehu de Azir Rachmana, meaning, as Rebbe Lazar had said, V'chai Achicha Imach teaches you that you have to return the ribbis. That's to the guy who did the lending. That's B'hadach with you, because the end of the pasuk is going on the ratio, which was Al Tikach, that you shouldn't take ribbis. If you did take, the pasuk is telling you have to return it. But for the son who didn't take the interest, he says the Gemara that he doesn't have to return it. But the inference obviously, but the father does have to return it. You see, like Rabbi Lazar, not like Rabbi Yechanan. Says the Gemara, nein, not true. Bedinu, truthfully, halacha is avu namid lemechayev lahachzer. The father, like Rabbi Yechanan, does not have to return it, and rather B'chayichicha teaches you, like Rabbi Kiva, regarding that when you have one flask of water, you drink it. So why are we saying that the children don't have to return it, and the inference seems to be the father does have to? No, really, it's the father also. But I did the Kabbalah Mr. Sefer Tom because we wanted to teach you the seifa of this price, which is hanich lenavian. But if the father left over for them haga, cow, the talis, and the cloak, anything that's distinct, that's recognizable that it's theft, and the father will always be remembered for disgrace, because whose car is this? This car was stolen from that person. The father died, now he left over Yerusha. Then they have to return them. They covered Avim because of the dignity of their father. So the Sefer had to be talking about the Yershin because it was a din in them. So Taninami Reisha B'ditu. So the Reisha also said about them that they don't have to return it. But the truth is, not only them, it's even the father himself that does not have to return it. Now, parenthetically, the Gemara asks a question on this brisa once we brought it in. The honey, you're telling me these cases of the cow or of the car or whatever distinct items that were taken by the father inappropriately, when they covered Avim Mimechayvi because of the dignity of the father, we were obligated to return it. Why are we obligated in his dignity? Kari Khan, we should recite it with the pasuk of Nasi Ba'am Sar. Pasuk says, a prince amongst your people you shouldn't curse, which is actually any person, but it has to be Ba'amcha, which is Ba'isa Maisa Amcha. He has to do like the actions of your people. If he's a sinner, then there's no obligation of not to curse him, up to treat him with dignity. This father is a ganav. This father is a guy who lends on interest, so there is no obligation to honor him. So why are you saying that when it's a distinct item you have to honor him? It says Gemara, Amr Pinchas Mishmei de Rava at the in Chagiga Daf Chavav Medalef that he says B'sha'aser Tshuva is when he repented. Hachanami here also, although he stole and he lent with interest, and Nami B'sha'aser Tshuva is where he did Tshuva. Says Gemara, ich verstehe nicht. He asked the Tshuva, repented my boy gabe. And what's the money doing by him? Which, as the top taster says, According to the one that says ribis ketzut says yet to be the yanin, okay, that's for sure asking well, because he should have returned it because the judge has taken away the money you lent with interest. But even according to the one that says it's not yet to be the yanin, he should have returned it because of laws and boishes. And since he's not concerned, his children also shouldn't be obligated in his honor. What's he doing with the money? Tshuva requires him to return it. Says the Gemara, didn't get a chance to return it until he died, but he already did tshuva, and therefore he is oisamais amcha, and therefore you would be obligated in the covet of vicha, and therefore it's a distinct item, and you have to return it. But now going back to Rabbi Yechanan, the Gemara continues to ask Meisvei. The Gemara asks on Rabbi Yechanan from the following brisa. The brisa says, Hagazlanin, the robbers, umalvi ribis, and those who lend with interest, afa pisha gavu, even though they collected it, machzirin, you have to give it back. Now, first the Gemara says, how do you read this brisa? Gazlanin, what are you talking about, robbers? Then my afa pisha gavu ikka, what is this? Even though they collected, there's no collections with the robbers. The mobsters are not making a collection. It's as the Gemara explains. Igazel gazel. If it's robbed, it's robbed. Eloi gazel, then, and if it's not, meaning then it's not collected. It's already robbed. And Eloi gazel was not robbed. Gazlan the kagzlo, you calling them robbers? What does it mean that even though they collected? So Ela rather says the Gemara, no. The Bryce is talking about gazlanin. And it's saying, my niu, who is the gazlan that I'm talking about? It's explaining. Malve ribis, the one to lend with interest. Okay. And what is the Bryce saying? And that was just parenthetical, just to explain. And Bryce is saying, Avapisha gavu, even though they collected, Machzichen, you return it. Well, that seems to be not like Rabbi Yechanan, because Rabbi Yechanan says you don't return, you don't have to give back the isser of the interest. Says the Gemara, you're right, but Tanoi, it's a machlekes Tanoim. So although this brisa is like Rabbi Lazar, not like Rabbi Yechanan, but I'll show you that there are Tanoim, the whole like Rabbi Yechanan, the Tanya, like learn the brisa. In Nehemiah, Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, Poitrin es hamalva the es ha'oriv. They exempt the lender and the guarantor from the negative prohibition and the lashes of lending on interest. Why? Why don't they get malchus? Because there's a positive commandment relating to them, and therefore, like Rashi explains, it makes the negative prohibition into a lav hanitik, let's say. Anytime you have a negative prohibition that could be ameliorated by then doing a positive commandment, let's say the isser not to steal, you don't get malchus because you can do hashavas gzela. Let's say by the bird with the mother bird, you could send it away. Anything that could be nitik say, we're not going to give you malchus for. Now, my kumase says the Gemara, what is this positive commandment that the lender and the guarantor could do? I'll tell you. La mishum damrin lahu, isn't it because we tell them, look, I know that you lender, you took the money, but kumaduru, give back what you collected. And that's nitik essay. Like we say, it says, I'll take out, don't take. I was saying, if you did take, give it back, because v'chayachicha, let him live with you. Okay, so that's obviously not like Rabbi Yechanan. That's like Rabbi Lazar. But Mechlav, the inferences, these are only two Tanam. When you're mentioning two Tanam, the inference is that there's a Tanakama, the Chachamim. Must be the Tanakama Savar, Lav b'nei adur ninu. That they can't, there's no giving back of the money. It's not nitik lase. They will get malchus. Because when it says v'chayechicha, it's teaching you Rebbe Kiva's halacha, like Rabbi Yechanan. Aha. So it's a machlekes tanoim if this is a nitik lase, if there's a giving back of the interest. Says the Gemara Loi. Not necessarily at all. I could tell you that the truth is that if it was collected, according to everyone, it's not remedied by giving it back to protect you from malchus. Because it's not nitik lase. Like Rabbi Yechanan. This that was saying that your potter is talking about where it was not collected. If it wasn't collected, the ribis yet, all it was an assessment that this is going to be done. That they assessed on this person that there's going to be the ribis based on the conditions that they made for the loan. On that, Reb Nechem Reb Lazar come to tell us when the Torah says Lo Yisasimin Lov Neshech, that was not going on just the sasimun on the shuma on the evaluation. No, it's a shuma, an evaluation that comes to collection. As long as it wasn't collected, that's their chiddush. Because the words of the pasuk would seem to indicate that you maybe would violate it just already from sasimun, a love neshech, that even just the placing of even though it wasn't collected, that's a teaching you no, that there's not going to be a violation as long as it wasn't collected, because you could uproot it. Says the Gemara, my kumase. What is it? So why is it kumas? It's not kumase. You didn't do anything yet. No, it's because you could get up and likroy shtara. You could tear the document. Therefore, that's what they're teaching. Since it wasn't collected and you could rip up the document, therefore that's why you're not going to get lashes. So now the Gemara asks and explains what we're saying. Wait a second, says the Gemara. Micah Savar, what exactly do the Tanoim hold? Iksav, if he holds star ha'omed ligavis, when you have a document that's ready to be collected, it's a valid document. Kugavo it's like it's collected because there's a lien on his property, on the principal and on the ribis, so it's like it's already the lenders. So questions of Abdi Surayu, they already did the Isser. So really tearing up the document is like returning the money. And if the collection that then you're saying if he collected, then he's obligated to return it. So that's already it's the same idea of returning it, and so that would be not like Rabbi Yochanan. And we love kagavadame. And if you tell me that a document waiting to be collected is not like it's collected, so like klum. So then they didn't do anything. So who would disagree on them? So how do we understand this halacha memanav shach? How do we understand it? If it's sha'over legavis kagavadame, so then actually this was done. And you're trying to tell me that no, it wasn't done yet, because everyone agrees like Rabbi Yochanan, it's not true. And if it was not collected, so they didn't do anything. So why would there be another opinion that would say, no, it's too late, they're getting lashes? Says Gemara L'olam, the truth is, Kisaver, that they hold that shtar im legavis lav kagavadame. That if it's ready to be collected, it's not like it's collected this document. And the Tanakama actually holds your liability is just for the assessment. That's what the Tanakama is teaching. The Summa Milsi, yeah. The pasuk says Lo Yisasimun Lav Neshach. The Sasimun, the just placing of the ribis condition is already the negative prohibition, and that's done. That's already done, and therefore you're going to get lashes for that. It says Gemara Hachanam Mistabra. It's logical, like what we're saying. The Nan could learn the Mishnah later on the Vayin Hema Beis. It says Ve'elu Oivrim B'Loisasei. These parties in a loan situation are going to violate the negative prohibition. Hamalva, the lender, V'Loiva, the borrower, Ha'arav, the guarantor, Ve'edman, the witnesses. Now, if you say that the liability is not going to happen, not like we just said, if you say it's not until it's actually collected, so I understand all of these characters, they did an action with the collection. The lender collects it from the guarantor from the borrower gives it to the hand of the lender, and therefore he violates leisashich. But what does the witnesses do when the collection is happening? They're not doing anything. Why would that create a violation for the witnesses? Rather, obviously, you could infer the summa milsihi. The actual violation is the evaluation, creating the obligation. Oh, so therefore the lender and the guarantor, also from the beginning, they're liable for the summa, and the witnesses are also part of that. Shmamina, that's where we can infer that that's already the violation, and that's what the Tanakama held. Whereas Rabbi Nechemia, Rabbi Yaakov, they held that no, that you could still be nitik la'aseh by tearing up the document. They don't hold that the sima is actually the violation, has to be only for at least an actual payment, and by tearing it's not going to lead to actual payment. Therefore, that is the machlokes that we thought it's going to be machlokes tanoim between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar. We said no, could be everyone agrees to Rabbi Yochanan, and they're disagreeing regarding a different principle if the summa is a milsahi or not. Now, the Gemara says, going back to the theme that we mentioned of this halacha of giving back the ribis, so Amar Rav Safra says a general rule. He says, Kol she'ilu b'dinehem, anything that in the secular law, which for secular people, ribis is not prohibited. It's a mainstay of making money on your money. But whatever in their laws, mציעא מילוי ולמלווה, that they would collect from the borrower to the lender. So if there is no security, but they made a condition between the two of them, like for example, ribis ketzutza. In secular law, if you made up that you're lending your money, you're lending $100, you're going to make $150. Obviously, secular law would mandate that they're going to collect from the borrower to the lender. So then, b'dinenu, in our law, if a guy collected, then the Gemara is just making a comparison to like a mnemonic to remember. Anything in their law that you collect from the borrower to the lender, then in our law, if it was collected, meaning which by us ribis is aser, we would give it back from the lender to the borrower, like Rebbe Lazar, who says that ribis ketzutza is machzirin hadayon and take it back. Now later on, the Gemara is going to ask actually from avak ribis, where in their law they actually say you have to pay, but in our law, everyone agrees ein machzirin. If the guy collected avak ribis, you don't have to give it back. That the Gemara is going to ask from, but says further Rav Safra kol she'ilu b'dinei, but anything in their law, in secular law, that emitzin miloiva lamalva, as the Gemara is going to explain what this is on Amud Beis, but they would hold that the borrower is not obligated to honor that condition. So in our law, we also don't consider that as a valid ribis, so to speak, and we wouldn't have to give it back from the lender to the borrower. That's the clause. So Amalei Abayla Rav Safra. Abai says to Rav Safra, is this really an ironclad rule? I'll ask as follows. But a sabisa is a case where someone says, hey, can you lend me a saw of sugar? And I'll pay you back a saw. Okay, the b'dineim in their laws, obviously if a guy borrows a saw of sugar, he's got to give back a saw of sugar, and we'll collect from the borrower to give it back to the lender. Now, ubedineinu ein machzirin. In our halacha, we don't give back from the lender to the borrower the excess, meaning if the price of wheat or sugar, whatever the item was, had gone up by the time he's giving it back, we don't give that back mimal v'loiva. Why not? Because this is a case of avak ribis. This is not a regular ribis of like, okay, I'm lending you $1,000, you're gotta pay me back $2,000. No. I'm lending you a core of wheat. You pay me back a core of wheat. That's all I want, the same item. But we know inflation. By the time he gives it back, it's worth already a few more dollars. So rabbinically, we're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to lend and give back the same amount because of the price increase. Now, if it was done, the lender is not obligated to give back that price difference, because that we said everyone agrees by ribis she'eina ketzutza, when it's not a set ribis, you don't have to give it back. But in secular law, this loan would have to be honored by the borrower to the lender, so that seems to contradict the klal that you had said. So Malay said to him, no, it's not true, because interesting, the terminology here is very delicate and it's important. Inhu, them, in the secular law, when they're going to require the borrower to give back to the lender the exact quantity of the saw, they're not collecting it from the borrower in the medium of the concept of interest. It's not like a concept of like we honor interest and we're requiring the borrower to pay the interest. Rather, it's because of the medium of a deposit. Because he gave him a saw, you got to give back a saw. When Rav Safra said his halacha, he was saying that anything in secular law that they'll extract it from him because of the honoring the concept of interest, in our law, then would make the lender give it back. But here, it's not because of interest, it's because of a deposit. He gave you this amount, you give him back that amount. They're not considering the legal ramifications of the inflated interest that they're mandating the borrower give it back. That's not why. It's mitoris pekadon. Mitoris pekadon has no shaykhs to what we're talking about for the laws of our ribbis. Okay, but then the Gemara continues to ask. Amalei Ravina Ravashi. Ravina asked Ravashi, "Vare meshkanta b'loy nachyasa." So we're referencing different cases that we'll see later on in this parak. We just said one case of sabisa. Another one is a mashkanta b'loy nachyasa, a security without depletion. What does that mean? So if, let's say, a guy lent someone $50,000 and the borrower gives the lender a vineyard to hold for security, and the lender is continuously eating the fruits of the vineyard throughout the time of the loan. And they didn't make up that the lender has to subtract the amount of the loan as he continues to consume the borrower's produce of his vineyard. That eating is ribis. That's forbidden interest because he's making money off the loan. That's called mashkanta. It's a security below nachyasa without subtracting what's owed from the loan. Now, the b'dineihem in secular law, we would collect if the borrower would have eaten the payros from once the vineyard was already security by the lender. Secular law would say you have no right. You borrow; it's not yours anymore. You give it as security to the lender. That amount in secular law, they would consider that interest as required payment from the borrower to the lender. They would take it away from the borrower and give it to the lender. Oh, wait a second. As it continues to Bays, right? Meaning they didn't say we're subtracting. It's your security. In second law, they would say, okay, you have to honor that condition of that. This is the security that belongs to the lender, and he could use it. What was not pre-written? Which part? I'm saying that's what it's to me a little bit what the Gemara's answer is, but it sounds like that's like that's the interest. Meaning, you, obviously, if I'm letting you hold it as security and you're using it, so we have the borrower can't eat the payers. It's the lenders. He's when he has the security, he gets to use it. But as the Gemara continues on with Beis, ubedinenu. Now in our halacha, in Jewish law, this would not be a case that we would mandate this interest for the lender to give back to the borrower, because this is called avak ribis. Why is it avak ribis? Because sometimes the vineyard doesn't produce payers because the vineyard could get ruined. It could be a bad season. So, like Rashi says, it's not called ribis kitzutz. It's not a set amount. So that's only avak ribis. Avak ribis, we know, but agrees you don't have to give back. Well, that's contradicting Rav Safra's klal. It's not true. It's not matching up. In secular law, they would make him give it back, and then in Jewish law, they would make the borrower give it. In Jewish law, we don't make the lender give it back. So Malay, again, he says a similar type of an answer over here. He says, no. In secular law, they hold that the security that you don't detract from, those payers are coming through the medium of a sale. That's what's coming lidayu to the hands of the quote-unquote buyer, which is really the lender. Because as long as the borrower didn't pay up his money, essentially, secular law considers that the vineyard is sold to the lender until the time that they make up between them that he could redeem his vineyard back from him. So it's not again ribis. So it doesn't fit the klal. It's not a contradiction because it's not a rib. They're not honoring it from interest law. They're honoring it. No. Right. So Reb Safra, you have to know if there's something deeper. But in surface, Reb Safra was just saying like a mnemonic. Like he's just saying, well, in secular law, when it's like this, for ribis, in Jewish law, it's like this. Now that's not ribis in secular law. We're using it as a framework just to know, comparatively, to know what would the halacha be by Jewish law. Not because we're comparing it's not because we're basing it based on secular law. It's just saying that that's a way to remember. Now, that's not true, says the Gemara. The Gemara says it is true because that's not a case of ribis, of secular law to compare. It's through a sale. So, okay, there's no bearing on what we're discussing over here for ribis. And Rashi says the truth is the Gemara could have asked also from the case of our Mishnah of Avak Ribis of Amar B'Peiros. It's just that the answer we answered would have answered that halacha also. That would be through the medium of a sale. Again, so anything that's not a ribis case, although it actually is ribis, but in secular law they would mandate the payment because of some other reason, either because of a kadin or because of a zavini. That has no bearing on this framework that was described by Rav Safra. So the Gemara says, okay, wait a second. So every case I'm giving you, you're saying it's not through the medium of ribis. So then elakolshi ilubedineim. So then I'm asking you a question. That whatever you said that in their law would require the borrower to pay, is where we're saying that the lender has to give it back. The comment of Rav Safra is saying, my slash mina. What is it coming to say? What are the cases of that? In their law, the lender does not have to give it back. That we don't take away from the lender, but it is ribis, and that in our halacha that the lender doesn't give it back to the borrower. So the Gemara says, okay, I'll tell you what these two cases are, meaning when it is and when it isn't. This is what Rav Safra is coming to teach us. Anything that is in their law, that he said we take away from the borrower to the lender. So then in our law, we take it away from the lender who got the interest to the borrower. What is that? That's ribis kitzut. So that's a set amount of ribis. Okay, the biblical case. So that's simple. What that's coming to teach us. That's saying when you make up, look, we're lending you $50,000. You got to give it back. 8% interest. And secular law would mandate you pay that. So then that's where, if it was collected by the lender, Rebbe Lezer holds you got to give it back to the borrower. When we say kosher ilu b'dineim eimaytziin, that in secular law they would not require the borrower to give it. B'dineinu eimatzin, in our law, then we don't give it back. That's called either ribis mukdemes, preempted ribis, which is if, let's say, you give a gift before the loan, or ribis mucheres, or delayed interest, which is after the loan, which at the end of the parak on Daf Yomi Beis, the Gemara is going to explain what these two cases are. Now, this is given as ribis, but in secular law, if you don't give it, we're not going to make you collect it because he didn't make it up with him. It's a gift that he's giving, and that's still for halacha says that it's ribis. But for secular law, a guy doesn't give a gift. That was never made up a condition for the loan. So such a case of that gift, which secular law would not make you give that gift to the lender, in Jewish law, if that gift was collected, although it's ribis, the dayanim would not go ahead and collect it from the lender and give it to the borrower. That's what Rav Safra's klal was teaching us. Now going back to the halach of the Mishnah, we had said the biblical of neshech was the biblical case of ribis. Then we said, what's tarbis? Ketzad. So we described that's the rabbinic case of ribis of our Mishnah. Of lokach chitim b'din zav hakur. So a guy buys 1 kur of wheat for a golden dinar, which 1 golden dinar is 25 silver dinar, and that was to buy 1 kur of wheat for later delivery. And v'chein hashar b'chulu, and that's also what the market price was. So this is the case that the Mishnah was speaking about. That's a rabbinic ribis, when what happens is that, as we described in the Mishnah, the price went up to 30. Now, the price went up to 30, and you say, hey, I want my wheat. Why do I want my wheat? Because I want to buy wine. And now I had bought wheat from you for 25, which was the market. Now it went up to 30. I made some money here. I'll be able to get more wine than I even thought I'd get. The guy says, look, I don't have wheat for you. I'll give you the wine. But I don't have wine, but I'll give you that. I'll honor that price of 30 silver dinar. Now that says the Mishnah, that's ribis d'Rabbana, avak ribis. That's what the Gemara asks. If the seller doesn't have wine, what's the problem? Because since the market price has already been established for wine for that year, and he owes him the wheat or the money, so it's like he's making up with him a price right now on the wine, and that shouldn't be a problem. Because Vatanya, which is actually a Mishnah on Daf Ayin Beis and Beis, Mishnah tells us the following halacha: Ein peiskin al haperis. You cannot set a price for produce to give money for, let's say, a kur of wheat, and to tell him, look, give it to me in 6 months from now. Now, even if that are those that they are giving it now, in the beginning of the harvest, but the market price has not gone out yet. So you can't make up that for a certain price that you're going to sell it, that you're going to pay him now, that he's going to give it to you in 6 months from now. Only until the market price is publicized and established, in the markets of the city, then that's okay. Yatz hashar paiskin. Once the market value has been established, you can make up a certain price for delivery later on in the year, because even though that the seller himself actually doesn't even have the wheat, but someone else has the wheat, and therefore you could buy it right now with the money that he's getting from this guy. So therefore, that there's really two ways that it's possible to do this paiskin imoy. Either yeshloi, the time of the payment, the seller has wheat in his possession, or even if the seller does not have wheat in his possession, of yatsa hashar, at the time of the payment, the market price was already firmly established, because like we said, even though he doesn't have, someone else will have, he'll be able to give it. So essentially, it's like it's yours already. So there's no problem about any increase in price, because it's like it's already yours. Okay, but one thing that we're asking is, in the case of our Mishnah, which again, you just have to remember what the case of our Mishnah was. It wasn't such a complicated case, but just at a few steps. If a guy goes and gives 25 for the wheat, which was the price, and then it goes up 6 months later and it's at 30, and now instead of that, he says, I want it now. He says, I don't have, I'll give you wine. He says, but I don't have, but it's already Yatz Hashar. That's Asam Drabanan. Why is that Asam? Didn't we say that that's a case you could be placed in the Yatz Hashar? So Rabbi says, Masnitin b'ba loche b'dmei maskinan. Our Mishnah is actually talking about where the seller didn't give to the buyer the money of the wheat that he owes him, that now he should go back and receive from him that amount because of the wine. No, what he's coming to do is he's coming to go ahead and create a transfer of obligations of the money of the wheat as a debt, and to say, for the amount of the debt, let's make up how much wine you're going to get. And he tells him, look, I'm accepting on myself the wheat that I owe you of 30 dinar, like it is that you could go ahead and sell it. That's the value it's at right now. You know what? I'll make it that's how much wine I got to give you according to whatever the market value of wine is right now. Because if he had wine, it'd be acquired from right now. Now, if it goes up in price, it's going up in his possession. But he doesn't have. And he's not accepting right now any money that he could tell him, you could have bought it with the money that you got. So it comes out that really that is like a loan. But is really, it's like he's lending him that money. Oh, Kedetanya. We learned in the Brisa that there's a difference between if he's actually giving him money, which is the classic case, like we said, we're giving you money right now, so that 6 months from now you'll give me the product, which that's okay if it's Yatz Hashar. Here, he's not giving him any money. It's just transferring a debt that he owes him. Because the Brisa says that if someone was collecting from his friend 100 dinar, and he's coming to the guy to collect the debt, and he's standing there on the guy's granary, and he says, give me my money, you owe me a mana, I want to buy wheat. So the debtor says to him, look, don't worry, I owe you, you want wheat? I'm the guy with the wheat. You're right by my garden over here. I have wheat that I'll give you. Say also like go out, let's make up according to whatever the market value right now is of the wheat. And I'll provide for you wheat for the whole year. Even if the price goes up, I accept upon myself whatever the increase is. I'll give you for the amount of money that I owe you right now. That is the piska. That's the making up on the payris. Not really. This is just like a regular case of what we're saying, paiskin ala payris. We're saying it's usser. Well, why is that usser? Didn't we just say that you're allowed to go ahead if the market value is out already? You can make up what it's going to be for the year. No, it's usser. And this is the point that the Gemara is asking from. Because the lavki sara bali yadudami. This is not like a case of when the guy gave an isser, which is a money, at the time that they made up a price. Because when you give money, you could say, hey, you could have bought it right now in the street with the money that was gotten. The seller himself could use the money. Money could be used. But here, there's no money. It's a debt. Oh, a debt's not going to help you for the halacha of paiskin. So wait a second. That contradicts what we're trying to answer with the halacha of the Meaning that this is actually, to the contrary, this is what the Gemara is answering on the question that we had said. We want to know, who cares that there's no wine? You could be paiskin. No, you could only be paiskin when you give money. The case of our mission, no money was given, no money was tendered because it was a debt that he owed him for the wheat that he's transferring onto the wine. No, that's not going to work. And that's why it's rabbinically forbidden. So Abaye says to him, wait a second. I have a question on that. If it's not like a case of like giving money, so my iri ain't like, then why are you telling me that the seller doesn't have wine? Then even if he had wine, it would also be a problem, because if you paid attention to the brisa, the case was the guy said, you owe me a mana, and he's standing on his granary, and he has the wheat. And even so, you told me that it's forbidden to do that transfer of a debt because no money was tendered. So why are you telling me in the halacha of our Mishnah that the guy doesn't have the wine? Even if he had the wine, there would be a problem. So Elam Abaye, Rabbi Abaye says a very different approach. It says, Rav Safra. Our Mishnah is actually talking about the way Rav Safra taught in the halachas of Ribbis, in the yeshiva of Reb Chia, and we're not talking about the halacha of Paisik Imai, where the guy's making up originally that he's going to provide from wheat. A very different case. The Tanya of Safra B'Ribbis to Reb Chia, the following halacha: Yesh Dvarim, there are certain things Shehim Mutarm, they're permitted. Vasurim and Neharamas Ribbis, they're forbidden because they're of the deceit of Ribbis. Ketsa, what does that mean? So let's say Amalei Halveni Mana. Let's say a guy says, look, lend me 100 dinar. Amalei says to him, look, Mana ainly, I don't have 100 dinar. Chitin b'mana yeshli, I have wheat of value of a mana. Shani Neislach, I'll give you that according to what the market value is right now. Okay, but listen, pay attention to what the case is. So he says, I don't have $100. I have produce worth $100. So Nasla Chitin b'mana, he gives him the wheat in the value of a mana, and then he buys it back. Where he's lowering the price by a seller because a mana is 25 slum. Now this guy was pressed for money. He couldn't wait for the market day to sell the wheat worth 25, which is what the mana that he gave him. So he says, the lender says, I'll buy it back from you for 24. Says the Brisa, okay, that's mutter, that's permitted to be done because he's not giving him the value of the wheat more than the value because of the fact that he's like what's called hamtanas mois, that he's waiting, meaning for the loan. It's just that he's selling him at a cheaper price. He lent him the wheat, and now he's selling it to him at a cheaper price. Essentially, that's permitted. But it's forbidden because of the deceit of ribbis. Because it looks like as if he's making money on the loan. Okay, but what? Right, exactly. It's permitted. It's permitted. It's a sale, but it's haramas ribbis. It really is making money off the loan, but it's not. But it is, and that's the haramas ribbis. Okay, says Gemara Hachinami, says Abaye, a very interesting approach now. Says our Mishnah is also like this. Going to Amar, it's a whole different case than we imagined up until now. It says like this. The guy says, Halvein shleishim dinar. Lend me 30 dinar. Okay. Amalei says to him, shleishim dinar ainly. I don't have 30 dinar. Chitin b'shleishim dinar yeshli. I do have wheat in the value of 30 dinar. I'll give you the wheat. And you'll be able to sell it. You'll have money. So chitin b'shleishim dinar. He gives him the wheat, a value of 30 dinar. Then mechazav alachem hemenu b'dinar zahav. He buys it back from him for only 25 dinar. So meaning our Mishnah, when it said like you have to look at Rashi at the last of the widest, the first of the last wide lines, because it's a whole different case. And the Mishnah said he bought from him wheat. It's on the lender. When he was coming, the lender bought back the wheat for 25. Now, when he's coming to collect, so the lender says, give me my money that I want to use to buy wine with, that money that you owe me. So he says, well, your money, meaning the wheat, will be made on me for the value of 30 dinar of wine, because that's how much wheat he lent him. He lent him 30, he bought it back for 25, but now he owes him that wheat. He says, give me my wheat. He says, look, I don't have, but I'll give you wine, 30. And he doesn't have the wine. That's what the Gemara is saying. If the bar has wine, the Yovele B'Shloishim dinner, where he's going to give him for the 30 dinar of wheat that he lent him, okay, so he's taking back from him produce. He gave him produce. He's taking back produce. Listen, but we're not bothered with that because he originally gave him wheat. He's taking back wine. That doesn't really look like ribbis so much. It's not even haramas ribbis. But if he's going to take back money from him, oh, that's problematic because a dinar zav is what he gave him for the wheat, and now he's taking back 30. So ve'ilai, if he's not taking back wine, if the guy doesn't have wine, that's what the Mishnah was saying. Even since he doesn't have wine, the Mishnah so he's taking back a zuz. Oh, that looks like ribbis because what do you give him? You gave him 25. What are you taking back? 30. That looks like ribbis. It's not, but it's haramas ribbis. That was Abaye's very interesting interpretation. The Gemara has a few questions. We're going to end with the questions. Omalei Rava. He says, if that's the case, ten lichiti? What's he saying? Give me my wheat. He's not giving him wheat. It's the monies of the wheat that he should have been saying. He already took the wheat already. It's the value of the wheat that is. And also, so says the Gemara, okay, no problem. The Gemara says, let's amend it. It means the value of the wheat. But then the Gemara has another question. If he's claiming money, shani moichron, that I want to sell it, it's that I sold it to you. Not that I want to sell it. This was already a sale. Says the Gemara, okay, Tani, read it, that I sold it to you. But the Gemara says, wait a second. The words in the Mishnah were, okay, you know what? Let my wheat be in the value of 30 dinar that it went up right now. What do you mean? This is what they originally made up. They originally made up that he's giving him 30 and he's paying 25 for it. So says, no, this is what he's telling him. The borrower is telling him, dinner, the monies of the wheat that you had made on me, that it was 30 dinner from the beginning, make it on me for wine. But he doesn't have wine. The Gemara, however, has one last question that doesn't like it. It doesn't make sense. If it's like you're explaining Abaya, that he bought it for dinner zav, and the shar was shloishim, and that's where he's selling it to him cheaper. Because if the shar was a dinner zav and he's inflating it for 30 dinner, says Rashi, then that would have been the ribbis because of the amtanas mois. The words seem to indicate not like Abaye's interpretation, because it sounds like that the shar was shloishim, and here it's saying the shar was 25, and therefore the Gemara rejects this interpretation of Abaye. I think at any time those things.